Hey, everybody, it's Steve Fretzin, and I'm just so happy that you're here for the Be That Lawyer podcast. We are, again, rocking and rolling twice a week to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. My job is to work with lawyers every day to bring out the best in them. And part of that is finding great guests that can share their wisdom and help encourage you to be your best lawyer self. And today is absolutely no different. Claire, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Good to see you. Good to have you here. Let's jump right in and let's do our quote of the show. This is a very simple, straightforward one. I'd love to tell you about it, and then you can I'll tell you what it is. You told me what it was. Then you'll tell me what you think. Work is love made visible. That is not one that we've had on the show before. That is a truly unique quote of the show. But tell us, welcome to the show, first of all. And second, tell us a little bit about that quote and why it's special to you.
Yeah, so it's from The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, which I know a few decades ago was like all the rage, but not as many people read it. Now I came upon it, and I will tell you, I think everyone should read that book of poetry. It's excellent. But his poem on work talks about work in a different way than I think anyone thinks about it. I know, like, I was raised Catholic, and so in the Bible, work is kind of presented as a punishment for our sins.
Hmm.
I think of work differently. I actually like a lot of kinds of work and have taken on extra work for myself besides my law practice. But I think that when you love what you do and you bring it into your work, it changes the dynamic, and it just makes it so that you're really living your values instead of this arduous, laborious process that's always a grind. I mean, sometimes there's hard parts of it, and sometimes there's boring parts, but it can really be how you find yourself and tie yourself to a community. So I
Yeah,
think that's what it means.
fantastic. I don't have a completely different take on it, but I feel like I do enjoy sales and selling. I teach sales free selling, so I enjoy like following my own process to find a win-win and a fit for people that want to work with me. But what I really love is I love teaching people the methodology. I love the idea that I can get results in my world by getting results for other people in their world. And so when I hear about work is love made visible, that really resonates with what I feel I'm doing every day. Somebody might argue that point, but that's kind of how I take it and why I pop out of bed and ready to go every day. So thank you so much for sharing that lovely quote. Everybody, Claire Parsons, attorney and mindfulness teacher, and would love, and we met through the wonderful Paul Farriga, who's been on the show once or twice, and amazing friend of ours and friend of the show. But give us a little bit of a background on yourself and how you came to be and getting involved in mindfulness.
Yeah, so I'm a practicing lawyer at a pretty large regional firm here in the Cincinnati area. I've been practicing over 15 years now. I do school law, employment law, litigation, so still practicing. I also teach mindfulness, and I've been practicing meditation for over 10 years now. And I came to meditation the old-fashioned way, and what I mean by that is that I had mental health challenges, and I had to learn to find a better way of dealing with them. And so my challenges had historically been overthinking, perfectionism, and a lot of anxiety.
Mm.
And that at times when things were going well, that would generally mean I was a type A achiever, got good grades, always did my work, was usually doing extra stuff to help other people. But when things went bad, I didn't have the coping skills to deal with it. When I had my first daughter, I had a difficult pregnancy. She was small, and then she came out. I got put on bed rest. I had to be induced, all kinds of stuff. And then she came out, and I couldn't breastfeed her. And
Mm.
basically, the message I got from that was that I had failed as a woman and a mother, didn't have the skills to deal with it, and I eventually recovered from that. But I learned that her happiness was really dependent on mine. And so I had to figure out some better ways with dealing with life. I had come across just books on Buddhism. I studied philosophy in college, came across that, got interested in meditation, and I actually started about a year after I had my daughter when I was really busy with my practice. And I started at 1 minute a day, and it just immediately started to help me. I mean, it was small, subtle shifts at first. Over time, it made more differences in my life, and we can talk about that. But it was just such a stark contrast that I couldn't keep it to myself. And that's when I
Yeah.
started speaking and teaching about it.
Yeah, and I don't know too many lawyers who aren't dealing with significant stress, either all the time or on, off and an often occasion. So, why do you think that stress is so prevalent in legal versus other industries?
I don't know that truly stress is more prevalent in legal versus other industries. I think a
Okay.
lot of other industries have a lot of pressures and stresses, but I do think with the service role that we are in as lawyers, we have high expectations and high client demands, a lot of competition and stress. I was a litigator, and so there's inherent stress just in dealing with difficult people, going through difficult times all the time. And I think part of the role of being a lawyer kind of sets us up almost to think that we handle other people's problems. We don't have problems of our own. And so many of us don't learn how to really manage stress and don't understand it very well. But that's why when I talk about meditation, like it wasn't so much that it made stress go away or it just made me calmer. It's not that I just had this period in my day where I chilled out for a while. What changed was my response to stress. And fundamentally, what changed was that I started to learn that I could not just handle my stress on my own. We're social beings, and social support is the best thing you can do to manage stress. But I would isolate, keep things to myself, feel shame about
Mhm.
being overwhelmed with things. And so I wouldn't get that help. And so meditation was wonderful because it helped me get out of my head to the point where I could actually make wiser decisions for myself and ultimately for my law practice over time.
And there's my understanding, and I mean I'm a transcendental meditation person, but is there a particular form of meditation that you practice that you really and that you teach?
I teach a few different practices, and what I would say I teach now is secular mindfulness. So I have experience in a few schools of Buddhism. I've done some retreats with Vipassana, with some Zen retreats and others, and I've studied. I mean, in America, you tend to study a lot of different kinds, but I would say what I teach is secular mindfulness. So most of that practice consists of breath focus. That's what I do almost every day. But I also think some really important other practices are ones that get you attuned to your body, and also ones that include some aspect of compassion or kindness. Loving kindness is a favorite practice of mine, and I do emphasize self-compassion a whole lot when I talk to lawyers. I know people can be resistant to it, and they think maybe it's not so great for people in competitive industries. I think it's exactly what people in competitive industries need, and research shows how important it is.
Yeah.
So that's a lot what I'm teaching. But in addition to the practices, I also try to help people understand how it actually can work for them. Because like TM, I could not do. I've tried to do mantra meditation and it's just not for me.
Hmm.
But there's a lot of different ways you can cultivate and develop a focus besides like mantra. There's a lot of different varieties and tools out there. And so it's not so much what practice you do, but more understanding that there's supports and things out there for you to get that help if you are struggling with your practice.
So, what are some of the fundamental parts of good meditation of what you're teaching? What are some of the different pieces that come together so that it benefits the individual?
Yeah, and I've talked about this a little bit in my book. I have one for specifically for lawyers, and I identified four practices within that I think are really essential. And one thing I'll say is exploration is great, and trying things out is wonderful, and apps make that really easy for people. But for lawyers specifically, I sort of identified like the breath focus. And I think working with the breath is great. Some people can have trouble with it, but most people it's great because it's tied to your nervous system. And so it's a wonderful way to be able to like learn to regulate yourself, but some kind of focus where you're building that capacity to be with something for an extended period, right? Whatever that period is, being with it and seeing things clearly. The other thing that's important is body awareness. So, body scan is a wonderful practice to do. Again, some people, if they have trauma or other things, could be a little bit of a warning sign. They may need some more help dealing with that. But getting attuned to your body is amazing from a self-care standpoint. I also have a joy practice that I actually teach, and I think being attuned to positive things in your life that exist, it's like the low-hanging fruit of wellness.
Yeah.
It's something you can do, but a lot of people just overlook because they're too busy. And then I kind of teach that also to set it up to start learning some of the compassion and heart practices, which include loving kindness, which is one where you bring people to mind and send them kind wishes. It sounds like a lot of wishing, and it's not necessarily that effective. Research shows it's really powerful. And honestly, it feels really good. And when you spend a day fighting with people over email on cases or going to court and yelling at people, it is a lot nicer to come home and remember what you actually care about and connect with that.
Yeah. And I think it's very difficult to do your job as a lawyer, do your job anywhere, but do your job as a lawyer with clients and in complex matters and everything and business development when you're under stress and when you're feeling overwhelmed and when just it's coming at you like a fire hose into an open mouth. How does mindfulness help with good business development and just good general like practice of law?
These days, I mean, I'll tell you, I think it's honestly it's hard for some cases to even practice law because sometimes it's getting to the point where personal attacks are happening against the lawyer. I mean, a lot of times it's the indirect, like the client's fighting it out and whatever, but it's even becoming personal involving lawyers. And for instance, I do school law, and so I'm often the bad guy, right? I'm representing the school district, and a lot of times the parents' attorneys hate me, and the parents themselves hate me, and it can be really hard. And so you've got to find that steadiness. And I don't only rely on meditation for that. I rely on my team at my firm, and my friends and my family a whole lot too. But what I will say is meditation absolutely comes into play there because a lot of law practice involves a gut check. And it's often like, who am I going to be in this case? And you have to consistently check in with your values to make sure you're representing your client as best you can, you're representing yourself as best you can, because you're dealing with hard stuff. There's risk. There's people who don't like you. There's hard situations. And so you've got to have that. And so I think meditation, other than just the time to calm down and whatever, checking in with myself and my intention every day,
Yeah.
or at least most days, that is huge. But if you've got that from daily practice for just managing your law practice, it's amazing how you can just start developing business too. You know, I used to be really afraid of developing business. I thought it was like sales and I thought I wasn't good at it. I thought I'm an introvert. I don't like networking. But what I'll say is like having learned to, manage my emotions, what you learn when you can start to manage things like fear and you can sit with fear or anger or disappointment or even shame. It's no big thing to go walk in front of a crowd of 500 people or go tell your story on LinkedIn to thousands of people you don't know.
Hmm.
That open the door to relationships and things. It's no big deal
Yeah.
to send out an email to a client about potentially a pitch or maybe an idea. And if they reject you, you've got the skills to deal with it. But sometimes, a lot of times, they say yes, and you get a new relationship with it.
Yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
it's really these values and understanding who you are and being really clear about that, and then having the skills to deal when things don't go well.
Hey, everybody, I know you're enjoying this interview. To hear more just like this, check out all of the podcasts on our website. Link is in the description below. Well, it's very difficult to do business development if you have head trash and a negative attitude and you're feeling overwhelmed and things are coming at you 1,000 miles an hour. So I think it's sort of, you know, a critical aspect of, and I've talked about this on the show with other folks that, this is your battery, this is your mind and your body. That's what you're, that's the tool you're working with, and you're not taking care of the tool. You're letting it sit in the sink and get rusty and get dirty, and you're not doing the right things to clean it. So, I'm doing, I don't want to do this, but I'm doing Pilates 2-3 days a week. I have to drive there. It's me and a bunch of women, and fine. Like I'm cool with that. But I don't want to be there. Like I would rather just sleep in or whatever. But I know how critical it is to take care of myself and stay flexible and build muscle and all that. And I just think we need to build habits into our lives to allow for us to take care of the battery, the mind and the heart and the body.
Yeah, and I think like there's several components to mindfulness that I think people don't always appreciate. So there's the in the moment, there's this value of doing the practice where you get a few minutes and you get to rest and you get to calm down. And that is good for your nervous system. It's good for you to have that time. When you're not in meditation, though, cleaning out the head trash, that's exactly what the practice can do, is like where you start to realize when you are thinking, you start to build habits and skills for challenging those thoughts. So you maybe want to send an email to an old client and reach out and just reconnect. But then you think, oh, I don't want to bother them, or they'll think I'm weird, or they'll think I'm trying to sell them, and they will hate me and all this stuff. And the parade of horribles goes through your mind.
You've already
So,
you've
and that
already you've already accomplished the future without knowing, without even
yes,
trying.
yes. And I'm not saying if you meditate, that's going to stop. It probably won't, or it'll take a long time for that to go away. But if you start to meditate and build those skills and practice them over time, you will then say, wait, is that true? Is that actually likely to happen? Or is that really how that person behaves? We went through a really big case and they were really happy with my performance. Maybe we can just try, or maybe if they respond badly, I'll just have to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And you can then move forward. And so some of the things I've said, people ask me a lot. So I have a blog and I have managed a blog, I have a law practice, I have kids, I've written books, and people have asked me how I manage that. And some of it is honestly the writing helps me clear out my mind, which is good. But the other thing is, writing doesn't take time. What takes time is all the hand wringing and the doubt and the crap that you have to go through before you can ever put words on a page and then ever dream to publish them. That doesn't actually take that much
Mm.
time. It's the doubt and stuff. And
Yeah.
meditation helps me deal with the doubt.
Yeah. And I feel like there's confidence that can occur when you have healthy habits, whether, again, physical habits, mental habits. I'm teaching business development as a learned skill. And so the introverts that I work with are terrified of sales. They're terrified of everything you just said, the clients and how they're going to think and how they're going to feel and react and all that. And sometimes it's also getting your hands on something that is proven, something that gives you steps to follow, right? Like there's steps to follow in meditation, there's steps to follow in business development, and language. Like, so for, just as an example, and I've shared this on the show before, but maybe if you have some concerns about the way a potential past client is going to feel about you inserting yourself via an email into their life again, say, look, I'm really, I hope, you're okay with this. I'm really uncomfortable even bringing it up, but I would love to reconnect with you and share what's going on. I don't want to disturb you, but I'm feeling like, it's been a long time and it sure would be nice. And just like taking some like not okayness off of them and putting it on you. And then they're going to come to your rescue, right? Because they say, no, you're the best, Steve. Of course I want to meet with you. And that was, by the way, a terrible like example of something I actually can say in a much better way. But it's the end of the day, and I think that's where I am right now. So, but I guess what I'm getting to is that repetition and getting into grooves, I think, is also another aspect of how we can start to get around some of the things, that the stumbling blocks that we have in our lives.
Yeah, and I think some of it is also just capacity. So I think like if you do have some regular things in your life, whether it's meditation or working out, I also work out, and I would say that's absolutely essential to what I do every day for myself. But I think if you have some things in your life that are for you, it kind of shifts your mind from overwhelm to understanding the reality that you do have some pockets in your life. And when you see that there's some pockets, then you might see more opportunities. Because it's really hard to grow if you feel like you can't manage the stuff that you've got. It's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to go try to get more business when you have what feels like a never-ending to-do list and you don't ever have any time for yourself. So I just think one of the things about like meditation specifically, but also other things, is that it opens up your mind to the possibility of a different future. And when you open your mind up to that, then you start to imagine, and then you start to actually come up with a plan, and then you start to implement it. So
Yeah.
I just think it's huge from that standpoint.
I mean, do you work with people too on the fact that they're taking on too much? I mean, that's a big problem in with lawyers is their inability to say no or their inability to delegate and working with people all the time on that. But I'd love to get your take on it.
I am not really a coach in that regard. Like I would help people if they wanted to figure out how to use meditation as a tool or mindfulness as a tool in their life. But I don't know that I would necessarily call myself a coach.
Well, not
I
not not
think,
coaching, but would the meditation or things you work with them help them answer questions about things that they should do or not do?
yeah, I think what I would say is like the mindfulness answer to some of that is that you're paying attention to how you feel,
Hmm.
right? And you're paying attention a little bit more to what your gut tells you. I'm not a yes person. I'm not a pleaser, actually. But I am someone who wants to do everything. I literally get excited about so many things. And I get just at the start of a new project, I just get so much energy. And sometimes I have found myself getting a little beguiled by what might seem like impressive or cool. And I don't always think real practically about it. So, what I've had to learn to do is pay attention to how things really feel.
Hmm.
Am I saying yes to this because I like this person or I feel like I should or because it's really something I want to do? And like as an example, I just edited a treatise for LexisNexis on employment contracts, and they asked me to write it, and I said no, I don't want to do that. But then they said, "Do you want to edit it?" And I was like, "Oh, I kind of like the idea of editing. I've never gotten to do that before. I have a big LinkedIn network. I'll see if I can recruit some people." And we actually got it done. And there was a lot of that project that was a pain. And there were a lot of times when I was like, oh my God, I'm going to tear my hair out. All these chapters are coming at the end. But ultimately, I wanted the experience of editing that book. I wanted to go through that process and see it from that side. I wanted to work with other lawyers to help them get their chapters done. And it ultimately was a good one for that reason. But I had to have a long, hard sit with myself about, am I doing this because it's impressive or am I doing it because I want to do it?
Hmm.
And I think part of what mindfulness teaches you to do is to check in with yourself and what is really coming up, both where you give yourself some time, you also give yourself some permission, but you also know where to look for the signs. You know where to look for these things. It's not to say you'll never make a mistake, but if you're looking and being honest with yourself, you'll get there more often than not.
Yeah. Something I want to go back to is I think people give themselves a lot of negative mind, games and a lot of negativity, and they don't really consider how far they've come or how much they've accomplished or how positive the day actually was. And they just dwell on the angry client or they dwell on the emails that they haven't, been able to get out that they thought they were. How do you work with mindfulness to help people focus on the joy and focus on the positives?
One piece of it is to remember that joy and just being excited and exhilarated, going to the theme park and being on a roller coaster are not really the same thing.
Hmm.
There's actually one thing to pay attention. I'm going on retreat next week, and one thing that you notice when you go on retreat is that really kind of boring food gets really exciting when you don't have as much stimulation. Just going on a walk outside is like the form of entertainment that's, glorious when you're on retreat because you're away from a lot of things. And so I think one thing is that it connects you with the simple pleasures in life and helps you connect more directly with what true joy is. Often it comes from connection and having our basic needs met. And so reconnecting with that, I think more often helps you remember what really matters. The practice of loving kindness, though, I think one of the things it does for me, like a lot of people do gratitude practice directly. I sometimes find that to be a little bit fake and forced. And I sometimes can't connect with it authentically. But when I do loving kindness, where I bring to mind the people I love, the people that I care about, the people that, are in my life and in my community, I feel gratitude. I remember what matters. And so I think reconnecting with that, it helps. And when you remember what matters, I also find that the incidental consequence is often motivation. Like you want to work harder maybe for that client that you actually really appreciate. You want to go help your colleague more because they just helped you last week.
Hmm.
And so those are the ways I do that through my meditation practice. And I think they're really effective to do.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. So let me ask you, we have a new segment that we're doing called, in this case, Claire's Big Mistake. And it's, again, what happened to you in your life that was incredibly challenging that you were able to overcome and learn something really important that you would share with everybody.
I think in the context of this podcast, because I was joking with you earlier, I was like, I can't just pick one mistake, obviously.
Right.
I think in the context of this podcast, I've already talked about like mental health issues and the mistakes there. But when it comes to business development, the big mistake was like thinking that I couldn't do it. I'm not necessarily claiming that I'm the biggest rainmaker in the world, but I have been able to like create a relatively large LinkedIn network. I've been able to launch a blog on my own. I am pretty well known as a speaker and someone who can, manage client relationships. And I've had some success even early on being at my new firm, growing into a kind of a little bit of a new jurisdiction for us from the school law standpoint. And I think some of what I didn't realize was that as an introvert, you actually have a lot of skills when it comes to networking and business development. I mean, organization, being able to write and think through things, forming close relationships with people and trust relationships. All of those are really great skills. And I think for a long time, I was afraid to start exercising those skills and training those muscles because I like told myself I couldn't do it. It was when I realized that I could network and develop business and all of that, but I had to do it my way.
Hmm.
That's when everything started to change. And ultimately, like my life and law practice actually got happier. So I think like opting out and coming up with stories about who I was or wasn't in a negative way, I think that was probably my biggest mistake.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And I do work with a ton of introverts. And the other thing I'll say about them is um, they're really, many of them, not all, but many of them are hungry for structure. And they're not interested in going out there in a room with 200 people all drinking and figuring it out in the moment and realizing this is excruciating. But to walk in with a game plan, to walk in with an infomercial, to walk in with confidence, you've emailed 5, 6 people ahead of time that you said, hey, I'll meet you there. And the preparation and the systems of and the language of what to do and say, I found to be very successful working with introverts. And again, whether you come up with it on your own and you come up with your own way about it, or you steal from the books and the podcasts and the videos that work for you, whatever the case is, you gotta do something to break through if you want to build a book of business. You can't hope it into existence. So really, really interesting stuff. As we wrap up, I want to take a moment to thank our wonderful sponsors. Of course, PIMCon coming up in October in Scottsdale, Arizona. If you're a PI person and you want to go to the #1 conference of the year, this is the one. Also, you're going to want to check out my friend Sonia on Law Her podcast. She's crushing it every single day. And of course, I've got my new book. It's been out for, I don't know, a month or so now based on when we're recording this and when it's going to come out. But Be That Lawyer, 101 Top Rainmaker Secrets to Growing a Successful Law Practice. So lots and lots of goodies there. Claire, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to hear more about what you do, they want to work with you on mindfulness, what are the best ways for them to reach you?
Yeah, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn at Claire E. Parsons. And they can also check out the blog, Brilliant Legal Mind. It is on WordPress and also social media. It's on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to follow. And the book, How to Be a Badass Lawyer, is on Amazon if they want to quickly learn meditation in about 150 pages.
Yeah, and what a great title too, by the way. You're putting some of my titles to shame, so thank you for that. Well, listen, I appreciate you being on the show, sharing your wisdom. I mean, so many things to unpack around joy and mindfulness and the things that we have to do to take care of ourselves to survive and thrive in this current environment. It's really critical for us to take a look inward, right, at ourselves and what we need to do to protect ourselves and our investment in the future by by just, being smart about things. So thank you so much, Claire.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for hanging out with Claire and I today on the Be That Lawyer podcast. We're here for your listening and viewing pleasure. If you check us out on YouTube, it's viewing. Also, the new book is if you want to get some of it's like a truncated version of some of the Rainmaker interviews we've done. So they're intertwined. But thank you everybody. Take care. Be safe. Be well. We will talk again very soon. If you want to check out more about what Fretzin does every day to help you be that lawyer, confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker, please check out our services page on our website. Just go to the website, check it out. I know you'll enjoy it. Thanks.